going to talk about how to weave. We've got a warped loom, as I showed in the previous video. We have snips, we have a shuttle. I've already loaded one shuttle. I'll show you how to load this one. You're going to take your yarn. A yarn bowl is very handy. It adds weight and keeps this from crawling all over the floor, but you can do without. First thing I'm going to do is tie a loop in the end of my yarn, just big enough to loop around one of the little horns on your short shuttle. Then I'm going to wind it over on the other side and then alternate sides to create an X on the edge. In this case, I'm coming forward towards me on each end when I go through the little hooks. You do a few of these and then you can flip to the other side, but then you'll be going through the slots in the other direction. So now I'm going away from me in them. You want to keep the load kind of similar on both sides. I'm going to stop here because you can always switch shuttles. And I'm just going to cut it off. So now I have two shuttles that I've loaded, one with a light and one with a dark. Choose whatever colors you want, or just do a single one. Now, as you can see, these are all in bunches, and you want them to be evenly spaced. Some people use toilet paper or cotton wadding in order to spread them out, but I've found it works really well if you just double up your weft, whatever that is. So I'm going to start by doing that. When I weave, I prefer to start from my right and have the heddle upward when I'm starting from the right. So I'm going to start from the right, heddle up, and I'm going to put a loop through the shed and try to keep it so that the loose end is towards me. And then I like to brace this against my body. I squeeze it between my legs. You can also just brace it against your body. I'm going to create a little more tension. Yeah. And then I beat that. And then I put it in the down position. And you'll notice I'm coming from the same side on each of these. That's so it's easier to pull out later. You can see I've got a cross thread here. That'll even itself out over time. So I'm going to pass another one through. And these gaps are huge, you can see that. But I'm making sure there's little loops. I'm not pulling this tight. But each time I do this, you can see these gaps are getting smaller as this locks those warp threads into position. You can use a shuttle to push these through if you're having trouble getting your hands through there. A little more tension without moving it forward, for me. I have found that doing this 5-6 times tends to be sufficient, unless you've got really big clumps. You can see, again, I've got about 1/4 to a 1/2 inch loop there. As you can look now, you can see those are almost gone. The gaps have almost evened out. I'm gonna do one more and look, but I'm probably gonna end up doing 6 because generally that's very nice and even. So I'll put one more loop through here. Almost perfect. I do like even numbers. So I'm going to take a 6th pass. You'll want to have included any fringe you want on the end before you do this, and then count this as part of that fringe. That is number 6. If I put it in neutral, you can see that my spacing is very even, but now that we've got that, we're ready to start weaving our actual project. I'm going to snip this off and start weaving for real. I'm going to start with this lighter color. You're going to want to capture this end so it doesn't unravel later. You can also use it to tie, so I'm gonna do the same thing I was doing before, which is up to start from the right. I'm going to pass the shuttle through from the right to the left. I lay it on my thigh just because it's handy with this between my knees. I'm going to leave this a couple inches sticking out on the end. Beat that, then down. And I like to tuck this in, at least 3 threads, and let it pull out the top if you want. And then I will go across from here, down shed. So the heddle goes down, that's your down shed. Now when you pull this, you want to watch your edges. This is your edge, it's called a selvage, and you want to try to make that straight and not draw in. So I pinch this right here, keep it from coming in so that this is wrapped around it, holding it snug but not pulling it in. I then add an angle here of the thread, because when you beat, it's going to tighten up as it weaves up and down over and under the warp threads. So an angle like this helps keep those edges straight. You don't have to beat twice, I just tend to. And now that we're on the right again, we go ahead and up, shed. You can snip this off later. So I hold this again so it doesn't pull it in. I'm trying to stay out at about 6 inches. Got an angle here. And getting those selvages takes practice. I make sure that I've always got enough thread to go through here so I don't pull this as I pull the shuttle through. And you'll see sometimes you'll get a little bit of a weird shed as something turns around here, but as you go, it evens out. So we're on the right, up shed, across to the left, pull that through. You also don't want it looped out because you'll get weird loose edges. An angle, beat. Now I'm going to keep going until I need to advance, and I'll show you how to do that. So you can see I've woven about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches. And as I go, the space I have here is getting shorter, and it's going to get harder to fit the shuttle through there. In order to make more space to keep working, you need to advance your work. And I'm going to do that with this on the right. It's not super important, I just sort of always like starting from the right. That's personal preference. But part of why I do that is so I don't forget where I am, because I have practiced it this way. So I beat and I put this in neutral. That is the neutral position so that the threads are all fairly lined up. You can see this is a fairly even plain weave. I've got about 3 inches here, and I'd like more space. So I'm going to start by tightening this a little, lifting the pawl, and letting it advance forward about 1/2 inch or more. Then I tighten this one, making sure I don't touch the pawl so I don't lift it with my hand. This has to be loose enough that it falls on its own. Then I'll just go back to the back, tighten, lift, let it turn a little bit. And I do this progressively so I don't get very, very loose warp as I go. Now I'm going to do this 3 or 4 times until this work line is about 1 inch from the front bar. And you can see now I have about 6 inches to work, which is about twice what I had before. In that process, one of the pieces of paper fell out. I can set that aside for my next project. You can reuse it on another project. Now that I've advanced my loom, I can go to the next pick, which I'm on the right, so I lift my heddle up. And now I continue weaving like I was before. It takes practice to get those edges, so don't feel bad if they're not perfectly straight. You can always hem your edges to make them pretty, or consider that part of the art. What you're doing is making fabric. Now, say I've gone a little while, and I want to change colors. One of my favorite ways to do that is to go ahead and start my next pick of the color change. And I'll go maybe 2/3 of the way through and just lift right up through that top shed. And I'll act as though I'm going to beat this like normal. I'll get it lined up in the right position, hold that edge, and then I'll take my new color and I'll go about the same distance in. And if you do this a lot, you'll want to vary those positions so you don't end up with a dome in the middle. but that's about even. And I line them up as though they're the same thread. Beat. And then I can go ahead and cut this with a little bit of a tail. And now I'm just weaving with the new color. And if you look at this, you can see that I twisted those two. I don't like that you see the dark and then the light and then the dark. So I'm actually going to back up and fix that. It isn't hard to do. You just have to pay attention. There you go. I'm going to pull this up a little. Then I'm going to pull this up, make sure I don't twist them. And then, there you go. Now they're not twisted. The light is closest to me, the dark is furthest. They stay there, and I'll show you after this pick. Now you can see that it just goes one color to the other, and you don't have that band of the first color in between two bands of the second. And now I just keep going. I'm going to show you another little fun trick, and this is called clasped weft. And the reason it's called clasped weft is because you're actually capturing the weft. So I've now put that dark through, I've run this through it, and I'm going to put it back in here, and you can see that my weft is now captured between the two sides. I'm going to pull this, set this the way I want it, pinch that edge, give it an angle, and then I'm going to pull this back. But I'm only going to pull this part way. I want to not twist these so that my tail is facing towards me. But I've got this part way across, and now I'll beat that as though it were one. And you'll see some gaps because I'm changing the thickness of the weft by doing this. But then you just do the same thing again. And it takes some practice, it takes some work, and it is slower. But you can get some really cool effects. And for me, then you have to get both edges going, but you can do fun little stair steps, angles. And my up and down is based on this, because that is what I had started with. But if I show you now, you can see that I'm getting an angle here between the two. And so the left and right side don't have to be the same color. I'm switching back to plain weave, which means I also have to snip this. I will go ahead and weave that in now, same way as we did at the beginning of the piece. I'm gonna go about 4 threads in. Try to get my edge nice. There we go. Transitioning between these two techniques is more work than doing either of them. There we are. I still have a little bit of a dome to allow that extra space. There. And now I'm back to plain weave, keyed on the dark color. A thing about terminology. When we warped the loom in the previous video, we put the warp strings on it. Those are the ones going forward and backwards. The ones going left and right, those are weft threads. Now I'm going to go and keep working on this, and I'll catch you in the next video when I show you what to do when you're done weaving your project.